Hello everybody, I hope you're doing well as usual. Today I'm going to talk about the spiritual path in a way that will go step by step into what we know happens to anybody who is in this path, and hopefully to get my point across in terms of what is the most important part of the steps and where do we feel we are. How can we identify those things that are happening in our reality, because there seems to be a blueprint as to how we go through this process into what we call liberation, enlightenment, or simply the recognition of who you are to live in peace and harmony. That's basically it. The spiritual path is just one goal, which is to find that inner peace and happiness that is within us so we can radiate it out. That's it. There's no complication. Everything else that we have created is just celebrations of this finding into many practices and ways to talk about it, to practice it, to become it, and so on and so forth. The whole point is to find that inner peace and harmony within us so we can radiate it outside of us. So, okay, I made this complicated steps because they simply are just more complications onto the same thing that we always talk about. But hopefully it'll help you to understand a lot more the process. Now I want to go from the neophyte to the enlightened one. The neophyte is just anybody who does not have any knowledge about spirituality, or may know something but is just not interested. They're not on this path voluntarily or consciously. Everybody's on the path, but most people don't know it. And they're seeking externally for those things that bring peace and harmony to themselves. They're trying to take out of the environment to satisfy themselves, which doesn't work. I often use the analogy of the river becoming aware of itself and noticing that it needs water, and so it grabs from itself and pours to where it thinks it is. You see? So it thinks that is fulfilling it because it feels that the water is filling that specific spot. But we know what's happening there. In any case, that's the neophyte, but neophytes can get the calling, which I will call is the first step. Everybody gets a calling. It doesn't matter if it was at 3 years old, 30 years old, 60 years old, whenever there is a calling. And that calling is what I would call a reshaping experience. It doesn't matter. There are so many experiences that can happen that would create this calling. And in the Law of One, if you follow me there, Ra talks about this in session 8, which by the way is a question that I never covered for some reason, and I'm due to cover it, but that's another story. In this question and answer, Ra talks about the fact that everybody gets their calling. Everybody gets all the environment or the situations around it to analyze and see, this is my calling. So that reshaping experience can take many forms. Most classic one is the mystical experience, which can happen at any moment. You see, there's a Kundalini awakening. I took psychedelics. I fell off a horse. I was in a car accident, although that may call for near-death experience maybe. It depends. But all these experiences that are mystical are simply an experience of unity or something beyond, something that we can't really describe, because when we put it in terms, it seems conceptual, intellectual, and it loses its appeal. However, it's a very real thing that we have been recording for thousands of years. It is a connection with the divine, we can call it. And we know what that is, but we just know at this point that it's a calling. You know, we get a mystical experience. It could be a near-death experience, like I said, an accident, or maybe an operation, or something that happened, suicide, or attempt to suicide will cause these near-death experiences. Ruptures is my word for saying I lost my job, I had to move, I broke up with my girlfriend, boyfriend, divorce, lost my child. So it could be also death of loved ones. I lost my child, or my father, or my brother, my sister, etc., people that are dear to us, my friend. Dreams is another one. which can be very potent. It happens. And so we start questioning reality. I had somebody approach me a couple of years ago, and she was telling me about her experiences. She told me that she had a dream which lasted 6 months. Now, she wasn't asleep for 6 months. She was asleep for one regular night, and very normal one, but her experience in the dream was so confusing because she remembered living in a village with people, knowing people. It was very extensive. That's a way in which you can question reality. That's a calling to find out the nature of reality. Because am I supposed to be this body-mind thing? Well, no, you're not. You're awareness. But we haven't gotten there yet. UFOs is a very classic one, which people see in the sky and then they say something is out there that it's not human. Now, my belief, and this is a very subjective belief, is that the majority of the UFOs that we see are simply human-made, but they're not public. And I think we've gotten a lot of information about this. But nevertheless, some of the experiences, some are actually, and I would say some of them are actually, it's like a mystical experience, what we call contact of whatever kind that is, third, fifth kind, I forget. But that happens, and people do have these experiences. It's not just watching something fly in the sky. They actually have contact, and that's what I would call a mystical experience. But somehow we still call them UFO contact or that kind of stuff. I won't get into the details of this, but the purpose of this calling is to make you aware that there is something else beyond what you believe in this reality. And now, here's the first trap, which I am hesitant to call a trap, but simply cycle. There is a possible cyclical nature here that will happen if the person, and we all know somebody who has been dedicated for years and years and years to research mystical experiences and or gone through many ruptures in their lives, and they kind of get a glimpse of what we call the seeking, but they go back to their lives. They never follow the calling. They could be obsessed with UFOs or with dreams or back to mystical experiences, taking psychedelics constantly because they're fascinated by the effect of the calling. It's interesting because the calling, as I'm implying here, it's calling you to something, to seek, obviously to seek that which you see that is beyond. And so the seeking now that's the cyclical nature of the calling. It'll continue to happen until you follow what it's calling you. Once you follow what it's calling you, you get to the next step. Now, the next step is what I call, and we all call, seeking. Seeking is it's very broad, just like the calling can be very broad. But seeking at its heart has one thing, and one thing only, is the searching for unity. There is only one seeking. Or in other words, there's only one goal to seeking, and it is to seek unity. Unity is really what explains everything else. Nothing else can explain what we experience. Unity. As much disconnected as it may seem from the death of a loved one, I guarantee you that there is an objective for unity there, because what we feel is love, and love is the expression of unity. So I don't want to obviously cover all of the possible callings and how the seeking for unity or the search for unity is really what it's all about, but we get into the mystical path, and that mystical path for unity, the search for unity, has in essence 3 unmovable and intertwined elements, which are recognition of separate self or ego, that which I know I am not, but I still believe in. Meditation, which is very elusive for a lot of people, and we don't know how to meditate. And the product of this too, which is healing or liberation. There's one key component here, which is what I'm really known for, not only by the law of one, but by my teaching, which is the knowledge of self. It's a simple investigation into the nature of your being, which is, if these 3 are the one generals for the mystical search for unity, then the knowing of self is actually what combines them all, or where they come out from. So if I could illustrate this, there would be the knowledge of self brings about the recognition of ego, the essence of meditation, and healing or liberation, the knowledge of self. So if you want to reduce it to its finest element, it would be know yourself. Once you know who you are, then you have touched unity. You have made contact with intelligent infinity, as Ra says in the Law of One, because you know yourself. Once you know yourself, there is no way you can confuse yourself with the ego anymore, and so the solution of the ego happens. Once you know yourself, because you are not the movement in which the ego is based, you're simply that which is, then meditation is not only possible, but natural. And of course, healing or liberation is a result of knowing yourself and causing these two to be in, let's say, in a dynamic that continues to harmonize yourself. So you see, the seeking is simply the search for unity. That unity is you. If you don't know yourself, you don't know unity. If you know yourself and know unity, then there is no separation. Meditation is natural, and healing and liberation is simply the process in which you get rid of all your conditioned thought patterns. Period. That simple. So the seeking also has what I would call another cyclical behavior, which is that people not only will get lost in the seeking in terms of philosophies and practices and activities and all kinds of, let's say, yes, activities that have to do with recognizing the ego and different modalities of meditation to finally, all of these healing, I need to heal a lot of myself. So you will find all different modalities to get rid of the ego, all kinds of modality for meditation, and all kinds of healings and liberations and getting rid of thought patterns and entities, negative entities, and so on. So people can get caught definitely in a cyclical pattern just in the seeking. Some people go to the extent to say, I am the eternal seeker, which is, it's true to a degree, and that's where I'll get to the final point. But it's not the eternal seeker that will never find, because the seeking must come to an end. Otherwise, we get caught in the second step. Dissatisfaction will finally settle in and make you feel like all this spiritual path is nonsense. I still feel dissatisfied. I'm still angry. I'm feeling jealous. I can control my impulses and so on. People will get caught there because the ego now has turned into a spiritual seeker. So there's a lot to talk about this step. But my point is that seeking must come to an end, and it'll bring it to an end once you know what you're seeking. You're seeking unity, and that unity is yourself. So know yourself, period. That's it. So the seeking again has a purpose. It'll bring you there. Now, I'm not saying that different modalities that exist for recognition of ego and getting rid of it and all types of meditation are wrong. I'm saying that they are means to an end, and they must bring you to know yourself. If you don't know yourself, if you can't establish in pure experience, in direct experience, who you are, and start to draw from that self the peace and harmony that you are, that intelligent energy, then you will be caught in an eternal seeking. That is true. However, what people really mean when they say eternal seeking is the next step. This is what I call the flowering. Because once you know who you are, like I said, you are no longer oppressed by the ego. You are able to recognize those thought patterns and say, that's simply not me. Liberation happens because you're able to establish yourself as not the meditator, but what meditation really is about. Really, meditation is being, simply being. It's not a pose, it's not a state of mind, it's not a state of consciousness, it's simply being. So when you are, then this happens naturally. And it's not the end of life, and it's not the end of the road. This is what people mean when they say, I am the eternal seeker, is I am the eternal traveler. somebody who's traveling, but you can be traveling as a neophyte, you can be traveling as somebody who is just dazzled by callings, different callings, and just stuck there. Or you can be a traveler who is cyclically seeking, or you can be God the traveler, which is simply allowing the movement of who you are to take you where it wants. That's what I call the flowering. And what is attached here is manifestation, what we know as the law of attraction. Creation, you start creating your own reality, but you see, it is not you, the ego, because that was gone. That's gone, that's beyond this. The ego is no longer controlling your reality. It is you as God, as divinity, as the creator. So the flowering is really the way in which we express ourselves naturally, without the intellect or thought to be involved, simply that which wants to manifest. Thought comes after. Thought is a byproduct of being. So the flowering itself requires its own explanation, because I use the term flowering, and everybody's flowering. It'll be completely wrong for me to say that only people who have gone through these steps are the ones who are flowering. Everybody else is just mud in the floor. Now everybody's flowering, but are they trying to control their flowering, or are they allowing flowering to happen? That's what I want to illustrate in the next stage of this video, which is going to have a beautiful drawing and a not so beautiful one, so I can get my point across. So let's move to that part. And what a better way to illustrate this than with the analogy of flowers. So with the flowering, what I meant was that there is an intelligence that is always within us, that is providing this development, this creation, this manifestation of who we are. And so when we realign ourselves with that intelligence, with that reality, which is really what's forming us, then we go along with harmony. When we're not, then we are trying to manipulate that energy into our own designs, what we think it's appropriate, what it's real, and how it should be. We are controlling. So I'm going to use these two illustrations, by the way. This was drawn by my wife, Julie, who is much better at drawing. And while she was drawing the other one, she was doing a beautiful one. And I said, you know what? Let me draw the one that is supposed to be distorted. Because as you can see, I mean, I didn't really put an effort here, but I'm not good at drawing. So I thought it was funnier if I would try. But that was the point. You know, the point is to show that the difference between these two flowers, one is of course accepting of the energy that it's making it, and the other one is trying to control it. I'm going to get into these points now, but first, just keep in mind that this energy that is this intelligence, in the law of one, we call intelligent energy. That intelligent energy that is forming what we are is present in both scenarios, in both flowers. These are the flowers that simply have, all the flowers that we have in nature, by the way, are like this. They're conforming to the natural energy, and that's why nature is always such a good teacher. Whereas this flower doesn't really exist. It would have to be, as we say in the law of one, of third density. It would have to have self-awareness, but it doesn't. Only in our illustration, in our analogy. And that means that this flower then has the capacity to rearrange itself, play with that energy that is informing it. And because it has an ego, because it has this feeling of separation, then it'll try to create its own being in accordance with its own belief of needs and scarcity. And so it may end up having a lot of roots, and it would design different leaves because it considers that, you know, it wants different leaves to absorb different nutrients and things from the air and so on. It becomes selfish and greedy, right? Then it decides that certain petals are better than the others, than the ones that it was naturally doing. And so it distorts its own self. Maybe it creates more pollen because it wants more bees. It doesn't attract as many bees, so it wants more pollen. Or maybe not enough pollen because I don't want bees to be attracted here. It doesn't want to conform with its environment, with where it grew up or is growing up and where it is. It's always resistant reality, and it's creating its own distortions. So that is what an egoic flower would probably look like, all distorted. And yet it's still part of nature. It's not like it doesn't belong in nature. It's using nature's energy to be what it is. It's only that it's shaping it, molding it through its own whims and desires. Whereas the other one, of course, is simply allowing things to be. And now this flower should be representative. I think it's too pretty to be representative of everything, but we see many flowers that are growing under the shade or under the sun, or where there is a lot of insects and animals, or where there aren't. And all these environments change, but flowers don't care. They just grow and they serve their function, and that's it. Whatever that function is within that environment, it doesn't complain. It simply exists the way it is. It doesn't feel envy because it doesn't have as many petals, or because it was bitten by something else. It doesn't matter what happened to the flower, to the wildflower. It simply is. Whereas this one will always complain because it's trying to preserve that image that it's only in her mind, and it doesn't want things to happen. And guess what? Things will happen. And then it's going to be dissatisfied with itself. Because of that dissatisfaction, it becomes unstable. Forget about the aesthetics of the flower. It doesn't matter how it looks. It could look anyway. But because it's unstable, it's going to create an absorbent environment for itself, meaning that it's going to absorb nutrients, for example, because of too many roots. It's going to try to absorb too many nutrients from the other flowers or the other shrubs or anything that is around, the grass. It'll start polluting the environment. It'll start doing negative things to its surroundings. And so you can see where I'm going here. And it's just because of the behavior, because it doesn't want to conform with where it is and what its function is in that place, in nature. It's denying its own nature. And so it's creating all of this disturbance, let's say, in the environment. Like I said, the other flower is stable as much as can be, with all its limitations and broken things. And it simply is stable in the fact that it is alive, and because it is alive, it'll fulfill its function. That's it. As long as it is alive, it'll fulfill its function. That's the attitude of nature. That's the attitude of our own nature, to become simply what it wants to be, and us allow it to be. It is always satisfied. It doesn't care. And because of that, is radiant. And that radiance is felt by any other part of the environment. The environment doesn't praise it, because it's nothing to praise, but it doesn't shun it away. It simply is part of a whole ecosystem. And that's what we truly are. We are a part of a whole ecosystem, unless, of course, we think in terms of control, feeling that I need to control the intelligence of this energy that is making me who I am. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to reiterate here. And the first one is that, again, the energy that is creating this flower is real. It is the same energy. It's only being misplaced, rearranged in a way that it's not meant to be. It's trying to pretend to be something that it's not. And so that same energy can be rearranged, and this is my second point, simply by allowing. And it doesn't matter how this flower created itself with all its distortions. All those distortions can be harmonized. And the stability, I don't care about the beauty or the appearance, the stability of everything that it has created, different leaves, different petals, amount of pollen, all of that will be harmonized. And that means that it will become stable independently of all the changes that it has undergone. So to bring all of this into a more real example, somebody who has committed many crimes and it might have been in prison or still is in prison, it doesn't matter. Somebody who carries a lot of distortions in itself, and they begin to go through this process of healing, they will naturally harmonize themselves. And every single thing that they have done in the past that seems distorted will be harmonized and balanced with who they are. All their past, everything that they have done is meaningless. What's important is what they are right now. And again, I use something physical like the flower, but we have to remember that this flowering is mental and everything is contained in there. Funny enough, Sahasrara, the last of the chakras, the crown chakra, is capable of having thousands of petals, meaning that it continues to flower because it is the sum of all the other energy centers, of all the other chakras, meaning that its brilliance, its multifaceted appearance is able to create more and more and more. And that's exactly what a balanced or stable being is. It continues to balance itself to create more and more of what it is, allowing that intelligence to simply flower. And that's it. I hope this is helpful, and with everything that I explained, to remember that all of this is possible through the only road, the only path that there is, which is the way of knowing yourself. Of if you know yourself, you will know that you are not in control of this energy, that this energy is living you. And so if you let the control away, then the ego is unarmed. It has nothing to do. It'll start dissolving. 3 key ingredients here: recognition of ego, meditation, and healing. All of these 3 are intertwined into the simple recognition of who you are, of beingness itself. That is the alignment that we need for this intelligent energy to simply flow through us and do the things that it wants to do. We're not in control of it. We're simply the spectators of it, and we want to see what comes out. So all these 3, they're intertwined: ego, meditation, and healing. I like to call healing liberation, because that's what it is. Moksha, enlightenment, that's what it is. Recognition of your own being dissolves the ego, establishes you in meditation, which I like to call simply the essence of meditation, and healing is a natural thing that happens there. I hope, again, this was helpful. Leave me a comment of what you think about this. You can follow me on Instagram. Also, I have a new account, if you didn't know, where I post in English, and you can contact me there if you're interested, of course, in what I do. I've been doing mentoring, I've been doing courses, and I'm really excited to just bring this to people here, anywhere else. I have nothing else to say but to thank you for watching and being on this path, and I'll see you in the next video.